hidden treasures of the 119th Psalm. Oh, I love the miracle verses, and we get to do a miracle verse today in the Nun section, which has to do with our faith, it has to do with our soul, and what a beautiful one this is. It's verse 112 today, and it reads in English, I have inclined my heart to perform thy statutes alway, even unto the end. And so you can't help but note that, wow, it's interesting to me that this miracle verse here in the Nun section is very, very similar to the miracle verse in the Aleph section, which you might remember he said, you know, I will keep your statutes, forsake me not utterly. That was the end of the Aleph section. And the end of the Bet section, it says, I will delight myself in thy statutes, and your word I'll never forget. And so here we come to the Nun section, and we kind of see this concept again, only here he's inclining his heart. And I do love this word incline. It's very similar to the word pitch, like you would pitch a tent. And so it's a stretching forth. And so you might remember in Exodus, there were several passages where he talked about how he would redeem Israel with with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Well, that word outstretched is the same word that the psalmist used here to talk about what he's doing with his heart. He's stretching it to the statutes, which are these holy. When you look at that word in Hebrew, it's a het and a kuf. And the idea of that, to me, is this idea of married to holiness. I mean, these are the things that really are really, really, really holy, those commandments. And when you review those in the books of Exodus and Deuteronomy, you can see that these are the things that are pretty hard to understand. And so, again, we get this idea of what our hearts long for, we have eyes to see. And so when we incline our hearts, or we stretch our hearts for holiness, for our union for God and holiness, then, you know, this is it's a miracle that we actually get to do this, because unfortunately my eyes will go to sin so quickly. It's unbelievable how quickly I see things I shouldn't see, or how quickly I when I'm looking for chainsaw parts or whatever it is that I may be looking for, wherever my heart is, my eyes just can go right there. So if we can stretch our hearts for God's holiness, then, we get to see that light that our Nun, you see our little candles, they're no good unless they reflect the light, right? And so you got to have that light. And if our hearts, you see, are inclined, if they're stretched for God's holiness, well, his holiness is his glory, right? And we're going to see this light, and we're going to see this light in so many different things, you know. And I just go back to, when I was one of the, I guess, points of my life that I would consider to be the lowest, when I had the infection in my brain, and it was called an abscess, and you might remember my head was swelling, and I was in this phenomenal pain, and God sent Ramona Seacrest. And Ramona Seacrest, you see, she was the miracle verse, right? She was the light that my soul needed. In other words, when she came in and I realized it was her, and I knew that God had sent her, you see, I saw God's face in that. I saw the holiness, and that was the light that I needed desperately in this particular situation, right? That our little, I shouldn't call them little, but our souls need, they're these candles, right? But they can't reflect something that isn't there. And so as we can see God's holiness in our daily, as you're studying this and you all of a sudden spot God, well, immediately when you spot God, that's his holiness, and you now begin to reflect that, you see. And so it's completely a miracle that we get to see it, because unfortunately our sinful nature wants to see other things. But when God pitches our hearts, when he stretches, puts that tension on our hearts to see this light, oh my goodness, what a phenomenal light that will be, which is critical as we are going through these letters, because this would, again, going to be our transition. We're going to go from the Nun section to the Psalmic section. And the psalmic section, you get to see the power of God in some very, very unique ways. And I can't even imagine going into the psalmic section without having some sense of God's holiness, because literally, in so many ways, you're going to get blown away immediately, almost in the psalmic section, if you don't have some light to guide you, as this power and the structure of what's coming is so critical to what God's doing to build the church, right? So we have the mem section that we did before we got to the nun, actually Christ, right? And now we've got this light that we can take to the earth. It's hopefully out from underneath the bushel and up on the top of the hill. And now as we come into community with the psalmic and the power of that and the might of what's going to happen, it's going to be absolutely beautiful. So what an adventure we're on. And we need these miracles where we see the light. And, what a neat reflection for you today is just to go, when did I know that I saw that my heart was pitched to see that light, and it just lit up my soul in ways that I could reflect it to my family, to other people. I hope you saw that today. And for you, that is keeping one of his statutes. Is to love him with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, which is miod. It's a beautiful thing. Thanks for listening.